Thank you very much for tuning in. My name is Dr. Reuven Sussman. I'm the director of the Behavior and Human Dimensions program here at ACEEE, the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. And today we'll be talking about energy efficiency in real estate listings. I just concluded and today published a report on an experiment we ran on energy efficiency in real estate listings and how it might affect the behavior of people looking through search results. So I'll start today by talking about that. And then we have Madeline Salzman here as well. And she is the project manager at the U.S. Department of Energy, working on the home energy score. And she'll talk more about the home energy score, how it's rolled out, and how we can use it. So let me get started with a few logistics. All of you are currently in listen-only mode. We'll have time for questions after the presentation, so please do type them into the question box at any time. You should have a chat box that you can type those questions into. We have Maxine Chicumbo here on hand to read through your questions, and at the end of the session, she'll ask Maddie and I some of those questions that you sent to us. The webinar is being recorded, so no need to furiously write everything down. We'll send you the link after the webinar. And of course, if you look in the resources tab, the resources link, you should find the report that I'm going to be talking about, as well as today's slides. Of course, you can always email us for more information, and you can go to the ACEEE website as well. So without further ado, let me get started with my portion of today's talk. So I'll talk to you today about the report that I just published, Energy Efficiency in Real Estate Listings, a Controlled Experiment. And for this project, I was joined by Christine Kormos, a PhD in environmental and social psychology and behavioral science, like myself, as well as Celine Park, an undergraduate research assistant from Princeton, and Emma Cooper, our very own at ACEEE, research analyst for the Behavior and Human Dimensions program, as well as the state and local policy teams. So before we get started, I just thought I'd poll the room. How many of you knew about how efficient your current residence is before you moved into it? This could be, maybe you knew their efficiency rating, or maybe you just knew how much utility bills cost, or maybe you knew nothing at all. Did you know how efficient your home was before you moved in? I'll give you just a few seconds to answer that. It shouldn't be too hard to think about it. Did you know your utility costs? Did you know your efficiency rating or not? Let's see. So 59% said no, and 40.6% said yes. So actually, this is a much higher, a very educated and informed audience, I would say. Most people don't know their efficiency of their homes before they move in, and they certainly want to. And the question is, would knowing this efficiency information or utility costs, change people's behaviors on websites? And that's what we set forth to find out. Would people change their home buying clicks knowing this information? So we want to learn. First, do home buyers click on more efficient homes when real estate listings contain energy efficiency information? Second, what's the best way to display efficiency information in real estate listings? And third, which home buyers value efficiency most? So if you have the opportunity to target, what's the best way? Who are the best people to target that are most likely to be responsive to this information? All right, so let's start with what we did. It was an online survey/experiment. And what we did is we simulated a real estate search results. We asked people a few questions about what they were looking for. So we recruited a large nationally representative sample of 1,500 Americans who said that they were going to buy a home within the next 5 years. We asked them to use our fake real estate website to tell us what they were looking for. Then we presented them with options and asked them to select them. Now, using this strategy, we were able to carefully control the home attributes. So they varied systematically on price, number of days on the market, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, as well as energy efficiency. And we were able to therefore parse out the effective efficiency from these other attributes, something you can't do in a real world examination of homes that are sold. Those people that saw efficiency information, not everybody saw it, received the information in different ways. So this is the randomized part of the experiment. Some people in the control group didn't see any information. Others saw efficiency information presented in different ways, which I'll explain later. For those of you who are familiar with discrete choice experiments or conjoint analysis, the search results were actually a hidden discrete choice experiment. And that was how we were able to manipulate things so thoroughly, control different attributes, and even calculate willingness to pay. So then we asked the home buyers to make a selection, and we were able to use this information to calculate the likelihood of clicking on efficient listings and the willingness of participants to raise the purchase price for 1 unit increase of home energy score. So how much were they willing to pay for efficiency? Now, to some degree, these are always exaggerated a little bit in these types of experiments, but they give us a good idea of whether people are more or less likely, and in which cases they're more or less likely to pay for efficiency and how much. So this is what it looked like. If you were a participant logging into our experiment, you'd see this after a preliminary survey. You'd see this nice real estate website, which you can see says Willow, which is our clever name for our real estate website. It asks you where you want to live. Then it asks you what your ideal price is with the slider. You select, if you want detached home, multifamily, how many bedrooms do you want, how many bathrooms. And then you're shown 3 homes. Now, what you're looking at now is the control condition. 3 homes that vary around the price you selected, number of bedrooms and number of bathrooms. It also shows you the square feet and how many days it's been on the market. Now, the home buyer selects one of these by clicking on the heart and then clicking next, and then they'll see another 3 homes and another 3, and they see 6 sets of 3 homes. And based on this information, we're able to calculate the things we wanted to know. Now, if you were randomly assigned, what you just saw was what you would see if you were randomly assigned to the control condition. This is what we call between subjects design, meaning that some people saw the experiment this way. Other people saw the exact same experiment, but the homes were displayed with this extra piece of information, the home energy score presented in a score out of 10. So this is the home energy score. Other people were randomly assigned to see the annual energy costs. This is the equivalent amount of energy. And this would change depending on where people were in the country, because that's just how it works. Depending on energy costs are affected by more than just efficiency. If you were randomly assigned to this condition, you would see the home energy score along a continuum. You can see. And then another group was assigned to see it along a continuum with the home energy, with the annual energy costs as well, meaning that you'd see both pieces of information. And then there was 2 other conditions, a control condition where you didn't see the information, and a voluntary label condition where only the most efficient options of the 3 were shown the home energy score, and they were also tagged energy saver. Now, we call that the voluntary condition because typically in voluntary programs, only most efficient homes get labeled. Okay, so here's, again, that experiment. This is what it looks like if you're randomly assigned to the home energy score along a continuum group. You select whether you want which home you want by clicking on the heart, and then you move on. Now, using your selections combined with hundreds of other people's selections and the magic of statistics, we're able to see when people are more likely to click on the efficient home or the inefficient home, and how much they're willing to pay for each attribute of the home, including efficiency. So let's get back to our research questions. Do home buyers click on more efficient homes when real estate listings contain energy efficiency information? So the answer to this is yes. People who saw, so in each choice set, there was 3 options. When people saw the efficiency information, they clicked on the inefficient homes less often, 23% less often, than when they didn't see the information. And they would click on the most efficient options 14% more often. So you click on the least efficient one less, and the more efficient one more when you see the information, the energy efficiency information. So we were happy to see that positive development. Second, I should also mention that we asked people how familiar they were with home energy scores, and regardless of how familiar they were, they responded non-significantly differently. So that's basically, they responded essentially the same, regardless of how familiar they were, essentially suggesting that the home energy score was relatively intuitive, and people didn't need an explanation of what it was. Okay, second question, what is the best way to display efficiency information in these listings? So I told you, people are randomly assigned to see them in different ways. Let's look at it first by which way it was assigned, how often people clicked on the most efficient option of the choice set. So they looked at a bunch of choice sets. So this is summing up all the times they clicked on the most efficient option. And these are the 6 conditions that people could be assigned to. In the control condition, you see they clicked on the most efficient option, between 2 and 2.5 times. Now, 3 of these conditions were significantly better than the control, meaning they clicked on the most efficient option more. And that was when they saw the home energy score, when they saw the home energy score along a continuum, and when they saw the home energy score along with the energy costs. Those were significantly better than the control condition because people clicked on the most efficient option significantly more when they saw that information. The other 2 were better than the control, but not statistically significantly better. So seeing just the energy costs and having the label only on the most efficient options was not significantly better than not having the information at all. Now let's look at it a different way. Clicking on the least efficient homes. How often did people click the least efficient homes? So here again, it ranges up to 2 across all the choice sets. These are the 6 options. In the control condition, people clicked on the least efficient option nearly 2 times. Now remember here, we want people to be clicking least efficient less often. So we want to see a significantly lower bar. And 4 of them were good at doing this, showing people the average annual energy costs, showing them the home energy score, showing them the home energy score along the continuum, and showing it with the continuum and the costs. These were all statistically significantly better than the control. So when they saw it presented in these ways, they were selecting the least efficient option less often. Sorry about the double negatives, I know it's confusing. When we presented them the voluntary label condition, only labeling one of the homes that are the most efficient, above average, this was no better than the control condition. It was very similar. Now, looking at it another way, how much were people willing to increase the purchase price for a 1-unit increase of home energy score? So we see parallel results. I couldn't calculate this for the voluntary condition because the information wasn't presented to all the participants, or sorry, for all the options. But for the other 4, you can see it's relatively similar to the information about clicking more or less often. People were willing to raise the price. Now, again, this is slightly inflated because it's a hypothetical situation. But when they saw the home energy score along a continuum, they were willing to increase purchase price by 10% to go from a 7 to an 8, for example. We don't know, actually, I can't say specifically whether it's 7 to 8 or 6 to 7, but on average, 1 step is about 10 or 11%. Similarly, you have 6% for just seeing the home energy score, just under 8% for both the energy score and the annual energy costs together, and less effective, but still somewhat effective, just seeing the energy costs. Okay, and I should mention that these energy costs, they vary depending on where you are in the country. Okay, the last question was which home buyers value efficiency most? And I urge you to check out the entire report because we did a lot of sub-analyses on this. We looked at, for example, education level, income level, where people were in the country, climate zone, whether people were urban or rural areas. And I'm just presenting one piece of information here that we thought was interesting, but there's a lot of other interesting stuff in the report itself. So we found that, again, this is how much people were willing to increase the purchase price for one home energy score level. And we found that those looking to purchase homes that were above $750,000 were the ones that were willing to pay the most for energy efficiency. Okay, so let's get to the key takeaways here. One, energy efficiency information led to clicking on more efficient homes, which is great for encouraging people to invest in upgrades. Two, voluntary labeling, meaning labeling only the most efficient options, was less effective. Number three, the home energy score along a continuum was the best in our simulation. And that when the home price is high, people are wealthy, and they're educated, they're most willing to pay for efficiency, or willing to pay most for efficiency. Okay. Finally, let's get to policy. What are the policy implications? This is a picture of Portland, because Portland, Oregon is actually doing a good job in policy in this area. We suggest that these results suggest that mandates for energy efficiency information in listings could encourage home buyers to change their behavior, which would in turn encourage homeowners or home sellers to potentially invest in upgrades to increase the value of their home before selling. Now, cities and states can make this a reality by requiring sellers to include get a home energy score assessment, and B, to put that home energy score into the description of the property. And this is done in Portland, Oregon. By requiring it be in the description of the property, it actually gets to these large aggregator websites like Redfin and Zillow. And so we'd like to see more cities do things like Portland. But then once the home energy score becomes more ubiquitous, we actually want websites to list these even more prominently, or consider, doing the types of listing that we've done on this in our study, where you prominently display it on the first page of search results. And also, I want to mention that we think that voluntary programs should be used as stepping stones. They're a good first step, but really programs where all of the homes are labeled are much more effective, and that's what we've shown in our research. So I'm going to turn it over to Maddie from the Home Energy Score program. But before I do, I just want to note that although the Home Energy Score program was instrumental in helping us disseminate the results of this study, they were in no way involved when we were creating the project or doing the analyses or running the experiment. So it was completely independent in that way. But we are thankful to have the support of the Home Energy Score program for disseminating the report, and of course, Maddie for being here today. So thanks, Maddie, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Reuven, and really appreciate not only kind of running through the research today on this presentation, but overall the commitment to a really robust analysis here. And it's been great for us and I think our partners to learn about the research methods that you have going on. So thanks everyone for attending and listening as well. As Reuven mentioned, my name is Madeline Salzman, and I manage the Home Energy Score program at the U.S. Department of Energy. And really what I'm going to run through here today is some more background information about how Home Energy Score works, how it's been set up at the Department of Energy, and for folks that maybe are interested in learning more about the program itself. It was really exciting to see some of the analysis that ACEEE has done in this space. And I also wanted to highlight some of the other analysis work that has gone on with some partner organizations as well. So probably obvious and not needing to spend too much time for this audience, but I like to always begin by acknowledging that residential buildings are important. They're often kind of the forgotten part of our energy infrastructure puzzle. They represent 95% of US buildings, 70% of building stock square footage. places where we have peak demand electricity grid information, we can see they have a disproportionate impact on peak demand at about 50% and overall 21% of U.S. energy use. And energy burdens are high for residents, and this is something that drives a lot of the work at U.S. Department of Energy in general. We want to make sure that energy is affordable and reliable, and we see efficiency as a really helpful way to do that. And I think it's important to center the conversation a bit around the difficulties a bunch of people have in meeting their energy needs. So about 1/3 of U.S. households report challenges in paying their energy bills in 2015. 1 in 5 report foregoing food or necessities such as medicine to pay an energy bill. And in 2012, it was the most commonly reported reason for individuals seeking payday loans to pay for their utility bills. So making sure people have good information, particularly when they're in key investment decision points about how much energy costs are likely to be and how they can make them lower, is really important to us. So we see the home energy score as a way to help build market value for home energy efficiency through standard data and metrics that are applicable to existing homes. We focus on existing single-family homes as well as townhomes for access to information, because we see that as an area where there needs to be more information in the market. And our focus areas are centered around consumer education, data aggregation, and real estate integration, and I'll touch on each of those. So overall, we envision a space where home energy score is recognized and widely used in the market to improve U.S. housing stock. End of the day, we want to show people not just where homes are today, but put them on a pathway towards improvement. It's not about just saying your home is not efficient, too bad. It's about saying right now, this home could use some upgrades, and we are connecting the dots to make that possible. And this is centered on a mission to build market value for efficiency in single-family homes and townhomes and improve quality of life for residents. So home energy score is what we would call an energy asset rating. And I could probably spend more time on this, but I will try to touch it lightly. Basically, home energy score creates an energy model based off of data that's entered about the home's features. So you can see that the home's attributes, like the number of stories and the conditioned floor area, combined with the home's envelope and equipment, go into the building energy model, and then through some standard assumptions about how energy is used, we come up with an estimate for energy use and energy costs. There's a few different reasons that we think this is a good approach for the real estate market, but I think one in particular is only accounting for items that are included in the real estate transaction. We're not trying to manage variables that are not affecting the real estate transaction of the house, and also focusing on the items that are most impactful to how homes use energy. Sure, some people maybe set temperature set points a little bit differently and things, and that's hard to cover, but when you just look at this is a house, we don't know who is going to live here next, but here's how we expect it to run. It allows for apples-to-apples comparisons between homes. So how it works, home energy score assessors collect about 50 data points per home, and the score is based on energy use per single family home, where a home that scores a 1 is expected to use more energy each year than 85% of US homes when adjusted for local weather and climate. So you can or poorly or well in any climate zone, because we do adjust based off of the local weather conditions. A home that scores a 10 is expected to use less energy than 90% of US homes, again, adjusted for local climate. And a home that scores a 5 is expected to use less energy than about 50% of US homes. So this is kind of just an easy way to get an understanding of how the score is designed to show homes across the country and compare them in a fair way to one another. So this is kind of the first page and the last page of our standard report that comes out of the home energy scoring tool that DOE developed. There are lots of other ways that a home energy score can look to a consumer, and that's mostly thanks to our dozens of software providers that we work with that will often make different versions of the standard report, still take the same data, but maybe focus on information that, that a local region perceives as really important to them. So as Reuven mentioned, there was a lot of research that went into developing of the tool, and it's exciting to see it kind of be played out in the research today. But it's designed to be an easy to understand rating. Even if people aren't aware of the program, they can figure out what it means. They're motivated to improve and compete with other homes in the region. They're given recommended improvements to increase scores. It's comparable between homes across the country. You can aggregate the data and also link to financing products and industry standards for data. And that ends up being a really important piece as well that I'll dive into soon. So I mentioned there's three major approaches we take to using home energy score with our partners. The first one is consumer education. We want to help people across the country have better energy literacy and understand what about their home uses energy, and if they think their bills are too high, what are actions they can take in order to improve their energy performance. We often like to compare home energy score to a miles per gallon rating or like a nutrition facts for homes. Any home can get it, and once you start to be exposed to the way the data is presented, you can start to understand how your home performs and things you can do. We have done a number of studies that evaluating the programs we've worked with that consumers do find the information interesting, clear, and helpful, and they self-report that they're interested to make efficiency investments through the information the score provides. So that's kind of on the individual level when you look at each individual report to a consumer. We also think about how the data works in aggregate, that we want to be able to add this information up into something that's useful for decision makers. So in aggregate, we want to provide consistent information to understand sector-wide issues, gains, and tracking. So this way, if a region is implementing efficiency programs, they can track over time how the energy assets are changing in homes in their region, and maybe how those assets are changing based off of different neighborhoods or other factors that can help regions better target specific housing or programs to meet whatever energy goals they have. The picture there is actually from a forthcoming study that I'll also mention later from the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory doing an analysis of Portland, Oregon. So on that picture, there's about 22,000 dots representing each of the home energy scores that has been conducted in Portland, Oregon in the last few years, which represents over 10% of the housing stock at this point. When our program hit 100,000 home energy scores in the market, we did our own analysis. We found that the average score today was 4.7, and the average score with improvements was 7.3. That range going from 4.7 to 7.3 represented a annual savings potential of 22% of energy use, $600 on energy bills, and 2 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent savings per home. I can talk more about the sample. So the sample is not, randomly stratified throughout the country. It's dependent based on where our partners are, but it gives you a little bit of a sense of the ways that you can analyze the data writ large. And then finally, we also do work with real estate integration. So there's a few different ways that we think about this. One is research, being aware of and helping understand and promote findings from research studies such as the one today are really important to us. Also pictured here is an analysis on energy efficiency in housing conducted by Freddie Mac that came out a few months ago now. And I'll also mention NASEO did an analysis of home energy score in low-income programs. We also think about financing products. Again, we want to help people be on a pathway towards energy improvements. We want to connect people to resources for financing their energy recommendations that come through the report so that it's easier for people to live in housing that performs better. So we have a few different energy mortgage products and allowances that we've worked with FHA, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac on in order to approve. And finally, education efforts. We have resources on our website to help real estate professionals better understand this information and how they can use it to their advantage. And also education for loan officers to be aware of the financing products that are available, and collaboration with the Appraisal Institute on their green addendum, which again helps people account for efficiency in the appraisal process. So I wanted to just highlight a few resources before I round out the time. So we have a ton of resources available, and some of the links are kind of long, but if you just search for home energy score on DOE's website, you can stick a link towards things. So one is a couple of years ago, we put out a toolkit from our Home Energy Information Accelerator, which focuses on how to bring home energy data to the real estate market. It's not just focused on home energy score, but it's really about figuring out what works best for your region and different ways that folks around the country have focused on this so far. I already mentioned the NASEO report on the value of adding home energy score to low-income energy efficiency programs. So I really recommend that report as well. As I mentioned, we care about people having access to the value of efficiency when they go to list their homes, and also when buyers are making purchasing decisions. And so we see this as a way to also help with wealth access in low-income communities, which I think is a really exciting angle to this work too. And then finally, we have a website that we launched about a year ago on the Better Building Solutions Center. And it's under the Better Communities Alliance tab, and it's a collection of websites called the Residential Energy Efficiency Tools for Local Governments. So it walks through 6 strategies that local governments around the country have undertaken to focus on residential efficiency. And I've highlighted number 3 because the focus there is to start a home energy labeling program. And we refer to the toolkit I already mentioned, as well as other resources that are available. Finally, before I turn it back over to Reuven, this is contact information for our team. I'm on the top left, but I can't get all this work done without others as well. So kudos to my great team for making all this stuff work, and we're happy to be in touch. I can turn it back over to Reuven.
Okay, thank you so much, Maddie. The work that DOE is doing and the home energy score is so important, and it's just really great to be able to partner with you for this webinar and for this work. Before we move on to our question period, I just want to point out that ACEEE has a variety of really interesting conferences and virtual events that I highly recommend. They're listed here. Coming up is, of course, Summer Study, which you can still register for. It's virtual this year. We have a lot of virtual conferences, including one that's very dear to my heart, which is BEC, the Behavior, Energy, and Climate Change Conference. I co-chair this conference. It's been going on for 13 years, something like that. And this year it's going virtual, so we'll have a lower carbon footprint, which I'm really excited about. We also have some really new interactive things that we couldn't do before that we can do now. So please check out the BEC conference if you're interested in this confluence of behavior, energy, and climate change. So now, Maxine, do you have any questions for us from the audience?
Yes, I do. So a couple for you, Reuven. Question here. Have realtors responded to the requirement of scores in Portland?
Right. So that is a good question. Maddie, you can probably help me out with this, actually, because I do feel that in Portland, the mandate began in January 2018, and I think that they're waiting 3 years to see how it shakes out before they're going to release any statistics or reports about that. So to date, we don't know, but we're waiting to find out.
Yeah, I can add a little bit there, and just that I mentioned that the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory has been doing an analysis of Portland home data. It's not specifically targeting the impact on real estate transactions, but just to better understand the spread of data and kind of do a landscape assessment of the data that's coming through. As Reuven mentioned, there's a lot of reasons that this stuff takes time. And so I think there will be opportunities for lots of research projects using that real world data. But there was a ramp up into implementing the program, and there's also a degree to which folks in the area need to be comfortable understanding how it works, setting up financing systems. So there's a ton of work going on in that space. I will say, in terms of research analyses that kind of touch on some of these issues, there's a great report I didn't mention of the Austin, Texas program, where they have an energy disclosure ordinance based off of an energy audit. And that's been around for a long time now, like over a decade. And so they have been able to do some analysis around the causational impacts of that that ordinance on the decisions people make. So I'd recommend that as a resource, but yeah, it takes a long time to go through the data and see what's having an impact.
Okay, another question for Reuven. So renters are more sensitive to costs and often very concerned about utility bills. Do you have plans to do work with rentals on this?
Well, I'm delighted you asked that question, because as a matter of fact, we just made the decision to go forward. Well, we're still raising money for a project, but we will be doing it next year on a very similar project to this one, in fact, on rental efficiency in rental listings. As a renter myself, I know the importance of knowing your utility costs before you move in, because in many cases, renters are spending more money on their, or a higher proportion of their monthly bills on utilities than owners are. So I think it's really important to do work in that area, and we have a plan for that coming up next year. So stay tuned.
And then a question for Maddie. What is the typical cost for an HER assessment?
Okay, so there's a couple of pieces there. So for an HERS assessment, HERS?
HER.
Okay, so I can't tell if it's a typo or referencing a different program. I'll go either way. Home energy score is different from HERS ratings. So if that's what they're referring to, I don't know what the going rate is for HERS ratings, but that's primarily used in new home programs and is a great and successful program. Home energy score ratings it depends on the region quite a bit, and it depends on the mechanism that's being delivered. So in Portland, I believe the going rate is about $125 as part of the real estate transaction. And that's roughly a benchmark we were going towards in terms of the design of how much data needs to be collected and time it takes to include. There are regions where it's more expensive. We attribute that mostly to different labor rates around the country, but we haven't done a full deep dive analysis. But we also see systems where people include home energy score as part of a larger energy assessment or home inspection, and then it doesn't cost very much because most of the costs are already bundled in the fact of traveling to the house and things. And finally, just to make it more complicated, we also work with a number of utilities who often include it as free service in their programs. So ranges from it's paid for through some other mechanism for consumers, so they don't pay anything, to probably around like $200 is typically the max I see.
Okay, and then this is a question, I guess, to both of you. What is the biggest obstacle to implementing more mandates regarding homes' energy efficiency info at the state and local level?
Well, I'll just say quickly to kind of set it up, but then Reuven maybe will have different perspectives. You know, I'll say from the DOE angle, we do not endorse any specific policy for local or state governments or anybody else to be taking on. We think it's really interesting to see how research is playing out in this space, but we would never kind of come in and say this is a specific rule that your region should have. We do a lot of our work with our partners, understanding what their goals are, what the issues they're trying to address, and helping them understand what options are available. So I'd recommend, frankly, if somebody is interested in that space, there are folks that they could speak with that are interested in that angle too, but it's typically doesn't focus on. Reuven, maybe you have a thought.
Yeah, so again, I guess I'm a research expert as opposed to a policy expert, but I do know a little bit about this. And what I would say is that from my understanding, there's some pushback from realtors that very understandably think that there's an extra burden that could slow down the process, and that's important. And so what I'd say is that, yes, that is a valid concern, but we're hoping that once these become rolled out and more systematic, that this burden would become less as the systems are in place to manage these a little bit more effectively and make them more streamlined. So thus far, pushback is mainly come from realtors that don't want to do this. To some degree, there's also some concern that lower income homeowners that might get penalized unfairly because they tend to have less efficient homes. And to that, we would just say, as we mentioned in the report, that we need to research complementary policies that address the needs of these low income home sellers so they're not unfairly penalized.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great point. Yeah, I think, and just kind of, especially off of that last note, you know, home energy score is a tool that we developed in a space of seeing miles per gallon and nutrition facts and being like, there is not something complementary in the housing space. It is a tool, but it is not, it's one item in the toolbox. And so something we're always very interested in is to better understand how home energy score can be blended with existing programs or be complemented with other efforts and policies or programs that can really make this a holistic solution across the board.
Another question for you, Reuven. Did you or could you look at the effectiveness of the voluntary label in the context of the score continuum, such as the yellow label for appliances?
Right. So I think the attendee is asking if we made the voluntary score a continuum rather than just a number out of 10 and the label energy saver, ! If that would change the effectiveness, perhaps making the voluntary score more effective or maybe less effective. And the answer is we did not check. Unfortunately, we couldn't check every permutation of every presentation that we wanted to. It would be really interesting to see if like the voluntary label presented in like a dozen different ways could be made more effective and maybe made as effective as the continuum strategy. But unfortunately, we just did, for every scenario we want to test, we need to recruit several hundred more people. And unfortunately, due to budget and realistic, recruitment restrictions, we simply were not able to test everything this time around. I think it's a good idea to do in the future, though.
Specific question for Maddie. Which utilities are providing HES?
Ooh, quiz question. Okay, a bunch throughout the country. So through the state of Connecticut, National Grid and Eversource have been longstanding partners of ours, and they offer home energy scores at a pretty high rate through their Home Energy Saver program. We also, I'm kind of like moving throughout the country, we also have been working with the state of Massachusetts and have been signing on about a dozen utilities throughout the state of Massachusetts on kind of a more cohesive strategy they've been taking on as a state. I believe our oldest partner and consistent partner has been Columbia Water and Light in Columbia and Missouri. They're fantastic partners. Everybody's a fantastic partner, but they've been around for a long time. And they've been implementing lots of scores. And I'll note, particularly in their program, they do both pre and post scores with all of their home performance with Energy Star upgrades. So that also presents a really nice data set of being able to see where homes start, where they're finishing, and what upgrades people are getting. They also, I'll just note, Columbia is where Mizzou is, and so there's a lot of interest with the rental population there too, many college students. So just a point that came up earlier. New Jersey Natural Gas and South Jersey Gas have both been longstanding partners as well. Or New Jersey Natural Gas was longer, and then South Jersey Gas joined more recently. I know there are others, but now this is where it starts to fail me. We've had different utility programs we've worked with focused on energy on their utility programs in Wisconsin. And then many of the other places are either state or city implemented, although I'm sure I'm forgetting some people, and I apologize. That's just a flavor, though.
If you wanted to know about which regions or jurisdictions are considering putting home energy score or some sort of energy efficiency scoring into real estate listings, there's a really great map that was put out by NASIO in a recent report. And I urge you can, if you have my report in front of you, you can do a Control F for NASIO. There's a website in one of the footnotes where we talk about the 14 jurisdictions that are implementing something along these lines or looking at that, and you can follow that for information on home energy scores or energy efficiency scores in real estate.
I was forgetting someone, the Fort Collins utility.
Right.
In Fort Collins, Colorado.
Another question about Portland, Reuven, is if Portland has a scoring program, do you know if they have seen similar results to your study findings?
Right. So I think we've kind of addressed this to a certain degree, and we just don't know what's happening in Portland yet because we're waiting a few years for the data to come in, and then we'll be crunching that, or somebody, I should say, will be crunching that, one of the national labs, as Maddie pointed out. So I just don't know right now. One thing I would note is that in Portland, even though they're doing this where the rest of the country is not, they still are not putting it prominently into the top level of the search results. You have to read the entire listing and then see the energy efficiency score at the end. So even in that jurisdiction, I think they could do better, but that's a good start, and I'd like to see what effect it's had, if any.
Yeah. And I'll just note, I mean, I know, like, in all of these spaces, the silver bullet research is like the actual data across 3 million homes with years of background, but also we're able to get it right away. And we're often struggling in this space, right, of like how to make sure we can hit as many of those points as possible. I think this study does a really fantastic job of setting up like controls in a way that will be really difficult or impossible to do in many real world scenarios. So there is totally another value in having more data from places like Portland, but it does take time. It's not as easy, like you're not inside of our survey tool in order to understand the click rates. That's data that needs to be collected from other people if they'll let you. So there's lots of complicating factors to getting kind of the silver bullet of sorts analysis, but steps in the right direction.
Yeah, and I should note that if the attendee is interested, there's a lot of research from Europe mostly, and also a little bit from California, suggesting that green labeled homes do sell for a higher premium than non-labeled or less efficient homes. But our study is the first under these tightly controlled circumstances to demonstrate a causal effect. It's harder in real life to control for other factors. So, we'd like to think that our study is helpful, and that real world data can also add another piece to the puzzle.
Totally. Great way to put it.
Question to you both. What role would you say industry training and awareness plays in making the home energy score implementation successful? Is DO or ACEEE offering any training opportunities for industry?
Maddie, I think that's more towards...
So which industry was the focus?
Just for industry.
Oh, industry in general. Industry is necessary to doing all of this. So there's a lot of different roles people can play. We do have one, in order to become a home energy score assessor, people need to have some type of other credential that's industry provided. We have a large list on our website of ones that we accept, but making sure that people who want to kind of play in this space are using those credentials, and that, people have access to good efficiency training is really important to us. I'll also note, I think about this stuff a lot. Half of my work is managing home energy score. The other half is managing our workforce development initiatives for the Building Technologies Office. So this intersection is very important to me. I think utilities have played a really great and important role in, helping us get home energy scores out in front of the public, and also doing the work of closely linking it to actual upgrades. Again, our goals are to improve housing and to motivate everybody involved to do the work that's needed in that space. And so having utilities that have been using it in their assessments and helping, when people have made upgrades, giving them a score that they can use in their real estate listing, I think is huge. Also, we've worked a lot with home inspectors in the space too, where if home inspectors want to offer this as something that they can do with their home inspection, again, that's another pathway that people can access this information. So ultimately, the whole success of the program is built off of having either nonprofits or businesses that are ready and willing and excited to see this as an innovative opportunity for them to help expand access to efficiency across new markets. But it's hard, so we always appreciate working with people in this space.
Reuven, can you talk about how the willingness to pay exceeded, in some cases, the actual value of the energy savings?
Yes, I mean, in a word, that's what happened. The amount people were willing to pay was more than most people would likely save in the lifetime of their home by through the energy efficiency of that home. So there's a couple of reasons why we think that people may have overestimated. First, as I mentioned in the presentation, using this kind of strategy, the discrete choice experiment, people tend to slightly overestimate their willingness to pay, or rather, you don't ask them directly to estimate, but that's how it comes out, a little bit higher than they really would. Second, we think that people are seeing energy efficiency benefits not just as a financial benefit. That is, they're seeing some value in they perceive maybe higher quality homes to be, like efficient homes are more high quality, or maybe they perceive that efficient homes are more comfortable, or that they are healthier, they're better for the environment. So there's these non-energy benefits that we think are raising the amount people are willing to pay for these, or how interested they are in efficiency. But we did find it interesting that depending on how the efficiency information was presented, it was rated as more or less important, or so rather, people were willing to pay more or less for the home based on how the efficiency information was presented, which I think is interesting because it suggests that maybe people are perceiving these non-energy benefits, or that perhaps people, in some cases, when energy costs are higher, people are perceiving the savings to be higher. One thing I didn't talk about in the report or in my presentation earlier is that in the Northeast United States, people were willing to pay more than in other regions. And in our analysis, we found that the average cost for energy in those northeastern states was a little bit higher than in the rest of the country as well. So it could be that they're perceiving the benefits more because there really are more benefits. So it's hard to say exactly why it exceeded the cost, but there's a variety of factors I think at play.
Another question, do you have or plan to conduct any research on how consumers behave if purchased an energy efficient home? Are they more likely to continue with energy efficient behaviors and upgrades after this purchase?
I think the question was, is there any data about what people are going to do after they purchase the home? Are they more likely to behave in other energy efficient ways? Are they more likely to upgrade after they receive the home? The question is, or the answer to that is that it's a very good question. And unfortunately, from this particular research, we don't know. I think that that's a good place to look for future research. Maddie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll just note, this study did not focus on that because it's hard to do that in the setup. But the Austin ECAD research paper I mentioned before, I think did kind of dive into that more because they had, I think, 10 to 20 years of data. They were able to kind of see the transitions of people moving into the utilities efficiency programs that they believed was attributed to the real estate requirement that was imposed. So that research is the one that I've seen does the most work in that space.
One thing that I noted from a previous experiment that I've done is that a good opportune time to suggest energy efficiency upgrades is when people are already upgrading their home. So when people move into a new home, they tend to be doing a lot of upgrades and retrofits and changing things, and that is a good opportune time to suggest energy efficiency upgrades as well. So, intuitively, I would imagine that getting the home energy score when you're moving in makes it more likely that you'll make a change or make an upgrade.
Awesome.
So,
go ahead.
Maxine, I think I see that we're at time now. Were you wanting to wrap it up now? Maxine, have you already wrapped up? Okay. I can't hear you. I guess I'm just going to wrap it up, seeing as that we're at 3 o'clock. I wanted to say thank you very much to Maddie for coming and joining me for today's webinar, and for the assistance of the DOE for disseminating this report with us. I also wanted to thank NYSERDA for helping to sponsor the research. And there's a variety of other individuals. Please read the reports to see all the acknowledgments. It's very hard to get a project like this from start to finish. It took us over a year, and we're very proud of it. And again, I wanted to mention that if you're interested in the kind of research that I just presented, please consider attending this year's BEC conference, December 7th to 10th, and it's virtual. So thank you very much, and we will see you at the next one. Next webinar or whatever we do next. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.